Welcome to Room 2B.
Where there's always room to be an informed citizen.
Today's lesson, Andy, is Foundations. As schools open up around the country teaching government and political science, what better time than to talk about our foundations, the U.S. Constitution?
Well, the basis of our Constitution and our system of democracy is based on those concepts that we've been trying to teach you guys from a very early age. And when I say we, I mean just Americans in general, trying to teach the power of popular sovereignty, the rule of law. So let's cover some of those basic concepts.
Well, it might be an Arab Spring around the world, Andy, but it's American fall. What better time than to talk about popular sovereignty? Here, Andy, we the people rule.
We the people rule. You can have two types of rule by the people. One would be a direct democracy, where the people actually vote specifically on policies, where the people are purely in charge of government policy. And the other type of rule is representative democracy, otherwise known as Republican government, where we elect officials who make those decisions for us.
Andy, those first three words, so important, so seminal to our form of government. Unless our government receives the consent of the governed, we the people, there is no legitimacy or authority. But let's talk about separation of powers, Andy. It is the sine qua non of our government.
Well, we feared too much power. That's what the American Revolution was about, fighting against what we thought was a tyrant in the British government. So when we created our first governments, we made sure to try to check the power of government. And in the Constitution, we do that by separating three branches of government.
Three branches: executive branch, legislative branch, and judicial branch. Let's talk briefly about each. The executive branch executes the laws, makes sure the laws are carried out.
And the legislative branch writes those laws, followed by the judicial branch, which interprets what those laws mean.
But they're not separate, Andy. They work together, and they check and balance each other. This is the way that we dilute power so that one branch doesn't have too much power.
That's right. So that's where the Congress can make a law, but the president can veto that law. And with the power of judicial review, our Supreme Court can rule that law to be constitutional or unconstitutional.
This is something you can do in your classrooms and talk about how checks and balances work, even in your own life. How do we limit the government so that our liberties are protected? Think of examples between the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch with you and your friends and your teacher.
Well, another very important concept that is really at the basis, the foundations of all of this, is the rule of law. The reality that when we write things down in a constitution, when Congress does make those laws, it is followed simply because they're words on paper.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, Andy, a constitution like ours, a democracy working, without you and me, we the people, consenting to those laws. And it's an amazing cultural phenomenon that generation upon generation still abides by those simple words written almost 220 years ago.
And that we, the people, follow those laws, not because we're always afraid of some security enforcer punishing us for breaking those laws, but we, the people, follow those laws because they're words on paper, written by government officials that we have empowered. And that, again, leads to that amazing Disraeli quote, "With words we govern."
Remember, James Madison said the very success of democracy depends upon the knowledge and skills of its citizens. Andy, as we begin a new school year and think about the foundations of this next year, it's mindful that we stop for a minute and pause and think about the foundations of our government and our political systems, still working 220 years later because we, the people, are still in charge. Want to be an informed citizen? We're the two teachers. No fancy words.
No fancy suits.
Plain talk about issues you need to know.
Just in time.